It's a Monday today, and we're really in the depths of winter. It's about minus 20 degrees Celsius outside. And so I am trying to stay indoors and get things done in the house that I've been putting off. And I also take Mondays as a day to kind of reset and get things straightened out in the kitchen and maybe do a bit of food prep for the week. So that's what I'm thinking about today. And I usually start my days off with cleaning the whole kitchen and kind of resetting it back to how it needs to be because things always get so messy on the weekends. I've got this little sewing table and it's foldable. So when I'm in the mood to sew, I can bring this table out, and when I'm done with it, I can just fold it and tuck it away. And so it's kind of a little makeshift sewing station. And the apron that I'm wearing in this video, I actually sewed on the weekend. And I really love the way that it came out. So I'm proudly wearing it, and it's got these deep pockets. So I love it. And so now I am going through my onions because I bought some new onions and they need to be put away. Onions is something that we grew on our farm the previous year, and I had onions almost all winter. But we bought pelleted seeds, and so those seeds were no longer good the following year. And so I will not be buying pelleted seeds again. That's why we don't have onions, and I have to go buy them. And just as a little tip, just like potatoes, onions like to be stored in the dark. So I keep my onions tucked away in my cupboard. But even better would be a cold room or a storage room, because the cooler it is, the less likely they are to go bad on you. But I just buy a little bit at a time, so I keep mine in my cupboard and I rotate them fairly quickly. And then I also have these oranges that I just decided to put a bowl on the counter with. This is just the last bits of shopping that needed to be dealt with and put away. On our farm, we grow microgreens 12 months out of the year. The only break I take is at Christmas, and the rest of the year I'm constantly rotating microgreens, and we sell them every single week. And so I'm just doing some chores today. I have to water my microgreens, and then I've got some bins that I have to wash, so I'll do that later. And then I also have some seeds that came in through the mail that I'm just looking at, and those need to be dealt with and put away. And so I just have microgreen chores that I have to do every single day on our farm. Some days are more and some days are less. The next task of the day is making some sourdough bread. And I am really getting back into making sourdough bread right now because I actually took a bit of a break. I've been doing sourdough bread for about 7 years. And off and on, I have lost starter, but my daughter and I both make sourdough bread. And so when I lost my starter, I ended up getting some of my starter back from her. So we've kind of swapped back and forth. Now, one of the things that I'm getting into right now is writing down my recipes and kind of recipe testing, if you will, and keeping track of things, because I've never done that before. But if I want to share recipes with you guys, then it's a really good idea to keep track of things that I'm trying out. And so I'm writing down this recipe, and this is a potato milk bread. And I make this quite often, and it usually always turns out for me. But I learned a little bit of a lesson in this video of being mindful. More on that in just a little bit. But I just heated my milk, added my potatoes and my other ingredients, and now I have to let this cool down for a bit before I can add my starter. So I'm taking a little coffee break, and I picked up this Magnolia Table Cookbook at the thrift store. And I usually look at a lot of vintage cookbooks, but I do like to keep a few newer cookbooks around because I love the pictures and It's just good to keep things fresh once in a while and get some new ideas. So in this cookbook, I found a recipe for pickled red onions, which I absolutely love. We go to a burrito place in town, and pickled red onions is something I always ask extra of because they are so flavorful. So I'm going to be making those. But first I'm ready to add my starter to my bread dough. And I'm keeping track, so I'm adding a half a cup, but I usually just eyeball everything. So there goes the half a cup. And here's the part where I mentioned about being mindful. Usually I am very mindful while I'm making my bread, but because I had the camera rolling, I'll be honest, I was trying to do things a little bit more quickly. And so I added a full 8 cups of flour here. And normally I'll add about 6 and then I'll just take it slow little by little. But that takes time, and I had the camera rolling, so I wanted to take up less storage space by doing it a little bit quicker, and that really didn't work out for me. So needless to say, my bread just didn't turn out as good as it normally does. But you know, this really got me thinking because it reminded me of my younger years homemaking and all of the mistakes made along the way. You guys, that is how we learn, through our mistakes. And I've made hundreds of mistakes in the kitchen. I've probably made hundreds of bad meals along the way. And honestly, this is how we learn how to become good cooks, because our families are brutally honest with us. They tell us if they like something and they tell us if they don't like something. And those hints always help. And your kids and your family are really your recipe testers. They test out the recipes for you and they let you know if they're good or if they're not good. And so making this bread really made me think about all of the trials along the way, and that I really have come a long ways. And I knew the minute I added too much flour that I ruined the bread. But quite honestly, in the past, I wouldn't have known that until it had come out of the oven. So there are so many things to learn along the way. And my kids are still going to eat this bread. And whether they like it or not, it's going to be on the table until it's gone. So I am just going ahead with the bread, and whatever comes will come with it. And one of the great things about being on a farm is the seasonality, and the summer is full on with being outdoors and working hard. But this time of year, I get to be in the kitchen and I get to play around and I get to be a full-on housewife, and I just soak it in. My husband does snow plowing in the winter when he's not busy farming in the summer. And so him and I are taking a little lunch break, going outdoors in the extreme cold because our dog Bruno really needs to go outside every day. And we usually go around the whole property, but today it's just way too cold for that. So we did a little half walk up and down and had to come back indoors fairly quickly because it's so cold outside. But while I've been working away in the kitchen, my husband has been in his home office, which is actually also our bedroom. And he's been doing a lot of farm planning and getting ready for his big seed order. So that's been really exciting. And here I am working my bread, and I can tell the dough is so much more stiff than usual. I like to do this stretch and fold technique, and it makes it so that you don't have to do a lot of kneading on the counter, which I like. But usually I've been making a really wet dough, and that's one of the things I love about sourdough is that you can do a high hydration loaf, which really just means that there's a lot of liquid in the dough. And when I usually do my stretch and folds, the dough stretches really high up. But anyways, moving on. Now I'm getting into the red onions, and I've got these red onions that are starting to not look so great. They're a little bit moldy on the outside, so I'm just peeling that away. And I've got that recipe I'm going to try out for the pickled red onions. And let me just say, you guys, this turned out so amazing. I included it in our dinner this evening, and they were just so delicious. So I actually altered the recipe a little bit from the cookbooks. So I'll leave a recipe down in the description for you guys if you want to give this a try. You just need to slice up your onions. I'm throwing mine into a mason jar, and then you just have to make a brine with vinegar, water, salt, and sugar. And then you just let it come to a boil, and you pour that over the onions, and then you let it come back to room temperature and then put it in your fridge. It's so easy, and it is just packed with flavor. And what I love is that they're still kind of crunchy. They don't soften like they would if you cooked them. So they're just so delicious. You've got to give them a try. With the stretch and fold technique, you want to come back and do it between every 15 minutes to half an hour. But quite honestly, if I make bread in the evening, sometimes I'll use my water from my parsnips and potatoes. And what I do is I use that water and then I make my bread in the evening, and I'll let it sit out all night, and then it won't get any stretch and folds, and I'll just shape it in the morning and put it in my bread baskets, and it turns out just fine. So you don't have to do the stretch and folds. However, I really do like doing the stretch and folds, and it does change the consistency of the dough. Back to my onions, I'm just adding that boiling liquid, and I'm just popping my skewer in there and getting the air bubbles out, which is just a canning thing. I don't have to do that, but I just decided to. And now I just need to let these cool off. And I'm telling you, I'm probably going to make these on a regular basis. I love them. So now I'm getting my bins from downstairs from my microgreen area, and I have to give these a wash up here. I also have a lot of black trays that I also wash in my sink. So I have to keep a sink strainer in there so that nothing big goes down my sink. And this sink, I only have one sink here. It's not a big sink. So I do have to keep a couple of extra wash basins around just so that I have added sink area. If growing microgreens, even just for home use, is something that interests you, let me know down in the comments, because I am considering sharing more about that on my channel. We started our farm in 2017, and we've been growing microgreens since 2019, so for several years now, so I've got a lot of experience with that. The next task on the list for today is moving my ancient grains into these buckets. This has been on my list of procrastinations for quite a long time now. I've had these buckets sitting around, and quite honestly, I'm really lucky that I haven't had any pest problems. Our biggest pest in the house is honestly spiders, but we have 2 cats, so there are never mice in the house, thank the Lord. These grains are all organic, and they are grown locally to us, which is absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait to put another order in. So I really want to use these grains up. I've got all kinds of different types here, including einkorn. I've got triticale, I've got carosan, buckwheat, barley, all kinds of things. And I've got a really old wheat grinder that my parents have had since they got married way back in the 70s. And now I have it because they bought a newer wheat grinder. And it really works great. I really believe in old things because they last. So right now my wheat grinder is actually sitting outside in the -20 because sadly I didn't clean it out properly the last time I used it, and I ended up with weevils in it, which are nasty little bugs that come from wheat. And 3 days in the minus temperatures will kill all stages of life. And so I've had it sitting outside for about 5 or 6 days in the extreme cold. So hopefully that does the trick, because it was honestly the best I could do, because there's no way I can fit that humongous wheat grinder in my deep freeze or anywhere else that's cold enough. So I'm lucky that it's actually winter and that I can do that right now. The rest of my grains are going into these Ziploc storage bags, well, freezer bags actually. And I'm cleaning out this top cupboard, which I actually had art supplies in, but it really just wasn't working out for me. So I will now be keeping some of my grains in there, as well as our popcorn maker, which is really big, takes up a lot of space, and I've considered getting a different one. But we've honestly just enjoyed having popcorn over the holidays, and I would really like to be able to keep my popcorn maker in the kitchen. Previously, I was keeping it down in our basement, so I'm moving my art supplies to a different area and making the kitchen more accessible for things that I need. And because I'm really getting back into my sourdough baking right now, I really want to be able to grind up some of these fabulous organic grains. And I actually made sourdough bread all throughout the summer months. And it was really in the fall time that I took a big break from making sourdough, other than making weekly pizzas. So I kept my starter going, but I really wasn't making a lot of bread. I was buying it at the store. And then when my daughter and her boyfriend came for Christmas, they brought their starter, and I had to take care of their starter for them while they went somewhere. So I ended up using their starter and making bread, and I just forgot how good it is. Despite the fact that these loaves are not perfect, I'm still going ahead and I'm shaping them, and I'm going to form them into balls. And this is what I normally do anyways with all of my sourdough. It's just that this dough is a little bit more stiff, and there's just a little bit more flour than needs to be in there. But I like to shape them, and then what I do is I put rice flour into my banneton baskets, and rice flour is not as glutinous as wheat flour, and so it helps it not stick. And you can put sourdough bread, once it's shaped and in the baskets, you can put it in your fridge for up to a week and just take them out as you need to for baking. And so a lot of times I will just shape them like this and stick them into my fridge, and I can leave them in there as long as I need until I'm ready to use them. So I love that about sourdough. And lately, I've just been making it all the time. And if I have too much, I just put some loaves into my freezer once they're baked. And I just keep it on a rotation. And this has just been working out so great for me. So I don't have to buy any loaves at the grocery store. And we can go through about a loaf a day in our household. I use it for toast for breakfast in the morning. And I make sandwiches for school lunches with my sourdough bread. And in a pinch, if I don't happen to have anything on hand, I now have my fabulous baking mix, which can make an assortment of different things. And that's what I'm also doing a lot of recipe testing for right now. You might notice on my bread baskets, I have some jute rope. And I actually glue gunned those on there so that I can hang my baskets on the wall. And I love doing that just so that they have time to air out in between the times that I'm using them. And that way they're easy to store, they don't take up a lot of space in any cupboards, and it also helps them stay dry. So this has definitely been one of the highlights of winter this year, has just been cozying up in the house, making sourdough bread, doing a few creative projects like sewing this apron, and spending more downtime than I usually do. I am trying to get more sleep at night, and I'm spending more time just sitting in the rocking chair, reading books, watching movies with my kids, and really enjoying these winter months because they do seem to last forever and ever, but at the same time, it goes by fast, and then soon enough it will be spring and we'll be right back into growing food and all that comes with that. And so now I'm getting my perfectly imperfect sourdough loaves out of the oven. They will be enjoyed by the family despite the fact that they are not perfect. And that is the great thing about homemaking. Mistakes can be made, and it's not the end of the world. No one is going to fire you, and it's just a learning lesson for the next time that you go to do something. And I'm really taking a lot of time to think about something new that I can learn this year, because I am the type of person that likes to learn new things, learn new skills. And I think creating new recipes is going to be on my list for this year. I really appreciate you coming along and spending my day with me today. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. And I will see you guys next week. So take care, have a great day, and I will see you next time.